Hello there. So Keir Starmer is going to sort out our cheap labour migration issues, is he? I call bullshit on that one. And we have some news on the nation's favourite name for a baby boy. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. So the leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, has decided that cheap migrant labour poses a problem for the economy. So he's told the Cheap Migrant Worker Dependent Confederation of British Industry that he will end their days of low pay and cheap migrant labour. Pull the other one. This from someone who did all he could to keep us in the European Union and so maintain the flow of cheap labour from Eastern Europe. And from the leader of a party that would scream blue murder and get their activists out on the street at the first sniff of a deportation. But right now the Tories are on the ropes over their inability to control migration, which is putting huge strains on our infrastructure. In fact, the Tories are dealing with it in such a way that it convinces ever more people that they're doing it on purpose, as it's the only way they can think of to increase GDP. Then build more and more houses to keep the economy going and the banks busy with mortgages while they tax anything that looks productive. That's the sum of the Tory plan. So Labour obviously sees a political open goal for them by just pledging to do what the Tories won't do. So we have the Labour leader pledging to stop the inward migration of cheap labour that undercuts UK wages, as well as promising not to go back into the single market, while all you see from the Tories is more inward migration and them being forced to deny plans to use a Swiss-style agreement to get the UK back into the single market. In one political heartbeat, the whole plot seems to have reversed. Actually, the reality is that the two-party state has become a mono-party state. They're all the same. But do you believe Keir Starmer on migration or the single market? I reckon he'd be the first to accept every climate refugee that wanders our way, for example. There'll be no change to the numbers coming in. They'll just be labelled differently. And if he's forced to get into bed with the Lib Dems or the SNP to get the keys to number 10, how long do you think those migration and single market plans of his would really last? Yes, I know he said he won't work with the SNP, but when the claw of power beckons... And there's no way that Labour would ever change the benefit system to get a better return for the taxpayer by getting more people back into work. Oh no, and that's the system that attracts so many people here in the first place. The result of a Labour administration will be no different to what we see today. Well, maybe worse. If they want a different result, the electorate must choose much more wisely, and the fragmented parties on the right of centre need to get on the phone to each other today, or just end up eternally carping from the sidelines. Now, this latest from Starmer comes on the back of his promise to abolish the House of Lords and replace it with an elected chamber. Yet another populist issue that the Tories promised to address and have fallen flat on. In fact, they instead seem intent on stuffing the Lords with some very dodgy placements. And how many times have we heard promises of Lords reform before, from both sides of the House, and every time it falters? The last thing MPs want is other elected people with the power to challenge them. At least with an appointed House of Lords, MPs in the Commons can claim they are in the democratically superior position. On top of that, instead of having Lords appointed into Parliament based on party, we'd have them elected on the basis of party. And in the interim, while the Lords still exists as it is today, Starmer also wants to hand the job of appointing Lords to an external authority, presumably yet another quango. So instead of lords being appointed by politicians, they would be appointed by someone who was appointed by politicians. And suddenly all new appointees sent to the House of Lords would have to be selected via a woke box-ticking exercise. You can see it coming a mile off. And if eventually elected, how would the woke establishment make sure the makeup of the new chamber was always of the correct diverse composition? As that would of course be the most important factor. And now the establishment is out to prove that we are not all in it together. The parliamentary watchdog, IPSA, that determines how much pay and expenses MPs and Lords get, has decided in its total lack of wisdom to now allow MPs to host Christmas parties for their staff at the taxpayers' expense. That's right, they can hold a party to thank their staff, but you will be paying for it. You will be doing the thanking. You will be thanking people you've never met using your money. At least they can't claim for any alcoholic drinks there, though. Although I would bet a few of them are able to mask it somehow. Talk about being unable to read the room. Now, quite a few MPs have blasted this new guidance from IPSA. But I bet most of them are wishing that the watchdog had told them more privately instead of splashing it about on their frequently asked questions pages. After all, the whole of the Westminster system is meant to be a glorified gravy train, is it not? And now, how about a bit of totally predictable consequences to the Rishi Sunak-Jeremy Hunt autumn statement? As part of this, they hammered the large oil and gas producers with another hefty hike in windfall taxes. This takes the amount of tax placed on their windfall profits to a stinging 75%. And Shell's response? We'll have to re-evaluate our plans for future investment in the UK. And that doesn't sound to me like Shell's chairman, David Bunch, means they'll be pouring more money in. Maybe more like they'll have to see if their plans are still profitable and maybe can one or two of them or scale them back, with possible adverse effects on employment. If anything, it might be better for them to just wind back for now and pay less tax. I mean, what would you do if the government suddenly said doing any overtime would be considered a windfall and you must hand over 75% of your extra income from the extra hours worked? Just remember, recently Jeremy Hunt referred to dividends as unearned income, the talk of envious commies. But consider the situation of two workers, Sam and Erica. They both get a £2,000 bonus for working equally hard. Sam buys an expensive holiday, and Erica adds the £2,000 to some investments she already holds. The result is that Sam will be going on a well-earned holiday with the money, but Erica will be investing in unearned income. Go figure. Now there's the issue of the most popular name for a baby boy. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Jeff, and good evening. So, can you guess what the most popular name of a baby boy is in Britain today? Well, here's a clue. It's not John. Actually, I'm not going to say what it is, and I ask you to go and look it up for yourself, because it says a great deal about the shift in demographic of this country, and not just in terms of political ethnicity and religion, but also which section of society is having babies and which section of society is going to work. No, I will not comment upon the allegedly damaging implications to our society and culture from such a rapid change in demographic. Instead, I will sit and contemplate for a moment the beauty of the red squirrel, which has been close to extinction for some time. Ah yes, that bushy red tail and love of nuts, a bit like a certain Labour Party politician, but I digress. We need to maintain a healthy level of ignorance to the shifting demographic in order to prevent any unwanted conscience developing and thus potentially disturbing the inflow from our new demographic of doctors and nurses that may or may not have a link to the most popular baby boy's name in Britain today. Let us not worry ourselves with the implications of new arrivals, and instead let's watch some hypocritical, virtue-signalling footballers do what they do best and fall on the floor pretending to be hurt. Boo-hoo. Or, for further distraction and ultimate titillation, we can watch our former health secretary eating an elephant's nether regions for his supper on a reality television show that has very little to do with reality. Oh, not distracting enough for you? Ah well, don't worry. There are streaming services with program upon program of brain-rotting, green rainbow-agendaed rubbish, all for you to watch from the comfort of your sofa. Why, you could even watch the inspired and diverse reimagining of Tolkien's Middle-earth on Amazon Prime that has no bearing or relationship to Tolkien's works. It was very expensive to make, don't you know, and is sure to bring out the liberal left social justice warrior in you, dumbing you down to a level of stupidity not seen since parents volunteered their children to undergo a certain experimental medical procedure. No, we must not think for ourselves and question the state narrative and change in our nation's demographic. That would only lead to conflict, and that must be avoided at all costs. Brave men of Britain, do your bit for king and country, and turn on your televisions, grab a can of your favourite beverage, and watch EastEnders. Oh, you mighty heroes, you. One day you will be able to tell your grandchildren, Saeed and Ali, that when the nation's demographic was irreversibly changed, that you did your bit to do nothing and sat firmly on your sofa watching football, soaps, and Netflix as Rome burned around you. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what time the chip shop opens. Anyway, back over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Richard. And finally, when subscribing, please don't forget to press that little bell and also select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the show.